So let's talk about the war in Ukraine. I know, terrible. It's a disaster. It's absolute madness. And yesterday, Oliver Stone spoke out that there was no need for this war to take place in the first place. And he spoke out about how overall this war was provoked. So I want to first play a short segment, and then we have a longer video segment in which he is speaking about the war. But here we go. Let's first start off with this. The first video of Oliver Stone talking about the war in Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine, and of course the United States being involved in it as well as a funder, including the other members of the European Union.
There was no need for a war. That was provoked. It was provoked. It's a long story, but there's a history to these things. In 2014, that war started. That was a coup d'etat managed by the United States in Ukraine, and that led to all these persecutions of Donbass and Luhansk, and that really caused the war. And by the time the Russian so-called invasion was into Donbass and Luhansk, basically, to protect the Russian minority population. That's the way it worked, and that's the truth. And whether they have denied it from the beginning and created this chaos in the world. There was no.
Now, there's a little bit of a longer video segment here, but these are two articles from RT. Russia and the U.S. were close to WW3. Now, the thing is, what I find fascinating is that this war was encouraged by the Biden-Harris administration as the tanks were about to get ready to cross into Ukraine. Did you think our politicians did the right thing at all? You think they actually stepped up and spoke out against any kind of military action, or the fact that there was no more talks happening in 2022? No. What did our U.S. House representatives and United States senators do? Well, they called the people who handle their finances, their stocks, and everything else, and they made a huge financial killing in 2022. Literally, while the world was holding its breath for the potential of WW3 to play out, our politicians were making money, 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 money. And don't worry, you were the last thing on their mind. In fact, hold on, let me be more clear about this, about our fair leaders of the Republic. They didn't think about you at all. They didn't want to help you out at all. Now, oh no, here comes WW3. Here comes a potential conflict that could escalate and put the whole world to a flame, and whoever's left will envy the dead. Don't worry, they were making their money, not even thinking about anybody else. So there was a point during the last 3 years of the Ukraine conflict where Russia and the U.S. were teetering on the edge of nuclear war, according to filmmaker Oliver Stone. Speaking to Russian students at Knowledge First event in Moscow on Tuesday, Stone spoke out against the U.S. role in the Ukraine conflict, as well as its biased coverage in Western media. The Hollywood legend suggested that over the past 3 years, Moscow and Washington have relived the Cold War spike in tensions that previously culminated in the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Apologies for the stutter early on. And said he hoped a corresponding wind down would follow. The United States and Soviet Union came close to nuclear confrontation during the Cold War after the USSR positioned medium-range ballistic missiles in Cuba, partly in response to an earlier deployment of American nukes in Turkey. I want to emphasize to you students how close we came to World War III because of this awful leadership. And speaking of which, we actually have the full video here, so let's play it in its full entirety. Shall we? Shall we?
Thank you so much. So, since the 80th anniversary of the Second World War, the victory of Nazi Germany is approaching. Let me ask the first question about that. Now we definitely see there is a trend, in the West to ignore or at least to minimize the role of the Soviet Army, of the USSR in the victory over the Nazi Germany. So what do you think of that, and which role do you think the USSR played in the victory over Nazi Germany?
I think this is a perversion of history. And I'm shocked by it, but it's happening. It's the European Union has done this. It's more of the political elite of Europe, I believe. I don't think the people buy this at all. I think anybody who reads history and is intelligent, thinks for themselves, the French people I can speak for, I think they understand much better than their leaders do the futility of this campaign against Russia by the EU. And that includes France and England. They're the worst. England is the worst. But at least the Italians, the Germans have changed. And I think the people don't agree with the government. I think this government in Germany is corrupt. rotten from the head down. Something's wrong, and the United States plays a role here. The Biden administration does. I think with Trump, we're in a new era, and I hope to God we mend our relations, because Russia and the United States are a great partnership, as is China, by the way. And I think we could have a world that is much safer, more energy, more economical, better prosperity, if we all get together and realize that it's a multilateral world.
But that was our
So the thing is, let's really look at international relations between the United States and the rest of the free world. First of all, let's be real here. There's always going to be rivalries between nations and leaders, between presidents and prime ministers and dictators and tyrants. Humanity has the history of always going to war with itself because, well, it's been our profession. At the end of the day, human beings, we are animals, and this is a basic instinct that has been hardwired into us for us to fear and hate the other, for us to fear and hate the different. We've been doing it for such a long time that were we ever to stop, it would be a foreign element within our entire collective psyche. Can we reach that point? Well, if we don't nuke ourselves, then yes, we could. But it's not going to happen within our lifetime or your great-grandchildren's lifetime. We're just too primal for that. But the United States being a major global superpower, and other countries are guilty of it too, because we've done it as well. Coups, regime change, wars, sanctions, blockades, interference in politics. Nations do this. It's a game. We've been doing it for a long time, especially in Central and South America, the Middle East. And the thing is, it's caused a lot of suffering. We want to talk about why there's a border crisis? I don't know. Never asked the CIA about its role with El Chapo. Don't talk about the sanctions and coups, regime change wars, causing civil wars as well. I mean, if you're a rational person living in these regions in Central and South America, you don't want to be in the territory of some drug kingpin or cartel leader, because at the end of the day, they buy off the powers that be to turn a blind eye, or is it that if there's a civil war going on, you don't want to be caught in the middle. So a rational person will flee to higher ground, safer ground. That's why there's a crisis at the border. If we look at overall why there's such open hostility, let's look at how we handle things economically with trade, with diplomacy. It doesn't have to be this way. But unfortunately, we have many politicians that are hardwired into thinking that. And in many ways, look at the old guard that's currently in Congress. The remnants of the Nancy Pelosi's and the Turtle Boy Mitch McConnell people. These are people who have been in politics for so long that their opinion is now deemed as fact. How they run things and how they live, they view it as, oh, that's just how every other person lives. They could live by them because money doesn't matter. But the thing is, these domestic and foreign policies are impacting billions of people. And that is a death blow to a nation. And we have to evolve and be better. We have to start stepping up as citizens to start correcting what our politicians are putting upon us.
I was going to ask you about the European countries, because they definitely suffered most from the cruelties of the Nazi regime.
Yes.
And now,
Yeah, I understand. Well, I said perversion.
And now they're glorifying Nazis like Bandera in Ukraine. I mean, they're cooperating with
Yes.
this regime. So do you think they have forgotten the lessons of the Second World War, or what's going on?
No, I don't think that's the case. I can't believe that fascism is popular in that way. I think it's the elitist leadership, the worship of the EU in some way has taken that message from World War II and perverted it without realizing it. I don't think it's as malicious as intention. We're not back to the times of Hitler, but what is happening is a loss of perspective, and we need to get back to a sense of reason. And in that regard, we must read history to understand it, and we must listen to the Russians, because they do. Mr. Putin has been very clear in his speeches, his talks, what he says. People don't listen very well sometimes.
You now during your performance, during your lecture, you said that you were unhappy with the West in their attitude to Russia over the conflict in Ukraine. So, as for you, what should have they done?
What should have been done?
What should have they done? Yeah, to restore respect between our countries, between the West and Russia. What, as for you,
There was no need for a war. That was provoked. It was provoked. It's a long story, but there's a history to these things. In 2014, that war started. That was a coup d'etat managed by the.
Now, here's the video that we played earlier on. This is the rest of it in case you missed out on it, or if you're tuning in right now for our live stream show that goes live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Central on YouTube, Kick, X, and Rumble.
United States in Ukraine, and that led to all these persecutions of Donbass and Luhansk, and that really caused the war. And by the time the Russian so-called invasion was into Donbass and Luhansk, basically, to protect the Russian minority population. That's the way it worked, and that's the truth. And whether they have denied it from the beginning and created this chaos in the world.
So the last question I would pose to you, really at the last, so I know they're short of time, is that despite this enormous pressure put on leaders all over the world against their coming to Russia for the parade to commemorate the 80th anniversary,
Right.
still we see that like a lot of them are actually coming from all over the world. So what do you think of that? They're coming.
Oh, it's a shame. I've seen it from the. No, I was here at the parade in 2017 or so.
16, May 16.
In 2016, it was. I understand the importance of it. The Victory Day is a beautiful, beautiful celebration over of the end of Nazi Germany, and Russia played a huge role, the major role in this. And I think part of this is a shame, and it's a disgrace that we forgot or pretend to forget. But this is the leadership. This is not the people. I know the people remember, and I think the people of these countries know that the Russians were a significant part, the significant part of the war effort.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
Yes, everyone's been saying something else, that somebody is making noises. I didn't want to say anything because I thought what Oliver Stone was saying was pretty poignant. But yes, the live stream chat, please be a little bit more respectful, even if you hear noises in the background, whatever was going on in that video, madness all around. But nonetheless, what can we take away from this? First of all, we already see firsthand that there are attempts by the Trump administration trying to get a peace deal to happen between Russia and Ukraine. But this administration, because of their constant back and forth, they're going to be crossing the Rubicon, and very well potentially, possibly, and however which way you feel about it, could be doing a hands-off approach towards how they deal with Zelensky and Ukraine. And this is a pretty bombshell kind of situation, because if the United States officially pulls out, that means the European Union will be left holding the bag. And that is also putting the entire European Union in a very precarious spot, because if they're now going to be funding this quasi-war and this war continues on and there's no ceasefire taking place, it is at risk of expanding the conflict even further, causing more pain and suffering and insecurity. Now, this is a mistake by the Trump administration to walk away, because, as we have stated before, the United States is a global superpower, a world leader. You can have your differing opinions about as much as you want, but when you have one of the leading global superpowers leave the table, that means anything's up for grabs. All bets are off. And it is imperative for the Trump administration, as Donald Trump has said himself, that he wants to do a ceasefire deal. They can't be talking about leaving the room. They shouldn't even humor the idea or walking away from any kind of discussions whatsoever. The United States, whether it was Trump or not, because this did not happen under Trump. And as much as he might want to boast and say this war would never happen if I was president, you're president now. And this war in Ukraine is a horrific scar that is forever going to impact that entire region. We're looking at people, generations of people, they'll forever be psychologically abused and traumatized by how this conflict escalated. And even though the Biden-Harris administration had numerous opportunities to do a ceasefire, we have to do a ceasefire now. Now, Trump has made it very clear that they want to have some kind of deal with Putin so that this war is over. But what have I said about all these conflicts? All what these wars do is lay down the foundations for the next one. I hope that peace can be achieved, but we're looking at an entire battlefield that is going to be littered with people who died for no reason whatsoever except for profit and stupidity, which is what all wars are in the end. Profit and stupidity. People dying for no reason whatsoever. That's the nature of war. And in war, all it'll lead to is somebody wanting revenge. We have to be better than that. And I blame the media as well for promoting all this Russiagate phobia, these fears. The analysis is abundantly clear. This war cost us trillions of dollars. What did we get out of it? We sent in military gear and equipment. And there have been so many reports throughout the years of these weapons, these vehicles, these are not working properly or disappearing, going who knows where on the black market where anybody can buy it. And then what? Those very same weapons that were supposed to go to Ukraine are found somewhere else around the world, partaking in another conflict, another needless, pointless conflict. And who is profiting from it? Well, your favorite U.S. senator, your favorite U.S. House representative. Go to Unusual Whales. I know I keep on sounding like a broken record. Go to Unusual Whales on X. See what your favorite politician is doing. See how well they're beating the markets. I mean, my goodness, it's almost as if they got a cheat code. But every time they click in that cheat code, know this. There's fountains of blood being spewed out so that they can get that green money. Is it worth it? To them, it is. But let me ask that question to you. Is it worth it? The answer is no.